How was the first day of ElixirConf? So for the keynote of this afternoon, it's gonna be me. I'm sorry. No. No. So it's a person who literally needs no introduction. So I will skip it, and with you, José Valim.
All right, I assume I can get started. So, hi everyone. I hope you had a great first day at ElixirConf US, and I'm here to talk about Elixir 1.19. So, let's jump right into it. So, today we're going to talk about compile time improvements, type system updates, the release candidate that is out right now, and some community initiatives. So to get started, compile time improvements, Elixir 1.19 can yield up to 4 times faster build times on large projects. And emphasis here on large projects. And in order for us to talk about what is new and what is different and why, let's talk a little bit about previous releases. So in Elixir, files were always compiled in parallel, way before 1.0. So if you go to our website, one of the first posts is about parallel compilation. So ideally, right, when you're compiling an Elixir project, you should see 100% CPU usage. But that's not what happens because we do have, especially when you have large machines with a lot of cores, some bottlenecks start to show up. And one bottleneck that we have is the code server. It's a process in Erlang that is responsible for loading code. And over the last 2, 3 years, we have always been improving compilation times, right? Using a bunch of different techniques. And I think maybe about a year ago, we announced like 30% improvement on compile times and we achieved that by improving the code server as a bottleneck. We did in particular two things. So one is that we started caching file system lookups. So every time you have to load a module, if that module is not available, the code server goes through a list of directories saying, hey, is this file potentially there? And we started caching those lookups for your dependencies. We did contributions to OTP, and we started caching it, and that brought a good speed up, not only to compilation times, but also to boot times. Your apps boot faster now. And something else that we did is to decentralize work, right? So if the code server is a bottleneck, we can make it do less work. So before it would go through the directories, find the bin file, read it from disk, process it, and load it. And now we have it like find the file, but then it just sends a reference of the file to the another process, which then loads, processes it, and so on. So we have been removing the bottleneck, um, making it have less contention, and we have seen improvements. And Elixir 1.19 has further improvements down here because compiled modules are now lazy loaded. So what is happening? And this is something that before I explain what is happening, and this is something that as I explain it, it's going to be so obvious, and we could have done it 10 years ago, right? But hindsight, right? Um, so what is happening here? So we have the code server that we established, right? Is the bottleneck. And when we are compiling our code, as soon as we compile a module, so you do def module, blah, 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 right? As soon as we define that module and compile it, we would load it, right? So we have all those files being compiled in parallel, and they are trying to load modules. And then we're like, well, what if we just don't load them immediately? What if we lazy load them? And this by itself yielded a 2 times improvement on compilation times for large projects, especially on machines with a big amount of cores, right? Because if you have a single process bottleneck, right, the more cores you have, the more impacted you're going to be, right? So a huge thank you to Alex from Remote to help us uh, find this issue, diagnose it, and the solution was relatively straightforward. And another big improvement coming in Elixir 1.19 is that we introduced this very clearly named environment variable called mixOS daps compile partition count. And the idea here is that Elixir, we did not compile dependencies in parallel, we compile one after the other. And the idea is that, well, if we compile files in parallel, there's no need to compile dependencies in parallel because each dependency is supposed to use all cores, right? And what has happened is that today, as we have more complex projects, we have projects that during their compilation, you have a dependency that during their compilation is going to download some artifact, or some other projects are going to use make files or another build system that may not be concurrent. And then under those cases, starting to compile those dependencies in parallel can yield compile time improvements. And this is going to once again like change based on the project size, the number of dependencies, the type of dependencies. So we've seen some projects seeing up to 4 times faster compilation times for dependency by setting this environment variable. So there's one question here, right? Is like, what is the value that you should set this environment variable to? And I think a good recommendation right now, based on feedback from the community, is to half the number of cores on your machine. So if you have, so for example, I have a machine with 10 cores and I set it to 5, and setting it to a number more than 5, I don't actually see any improvements because once again, we already do a lot of things in parallel. So this is more of a way to squeeze more of those cores that may not be used due to a dependency like downloading something or using something slow. So half the number of cores is a really good beginning. And bear in mind that mm, compilation is like resource intensive. So when you set it to 5, for example, you're now running 5 Erlang virtual machines, all compiling it, right? So it's going to increase memory usage. So it's something to keep in mind if you are enabling these on CI, for example, right? It may impact, you may need like beefier machines, but if it all goes to plan and you're seeing the numbers here, we have people reporting their CI times going from 20 minutes to around 6, which is absolutely fantastic. All right, next in the agenda, type system updates. So we have been talking about type systems for quite some time. So we started a research and development of a type system for Elixir with Guillaume, Beppe, and myself. We published the paper, and Elixir 1.17 was the first release to include some type system developments. And what we did in 1.17 is that we started implementing the type system. We taught it about integers, floats, also atoms, okay, error, true, false, and we taught it about binaries and maps with atom keys. Then Elixir 1.18 came, and we started supporting lists and tuples. We started supporting type inference of patterns. So we started seeing the type system actually find bugs in application because we were looking at the patterns and saying, oh, this is a tuple. Is it being used consistently as a tuple throughout this function? And we also added type checking of local and remote function calls. And we also added invalid pattern detection in case, with, and com. So if you have a pattern that we know it's never going to match, we are going to emit a warning. So as you can see here, we have been every release, we are improving the type system so it understands more about the data types, more about your code base. And Elixir 1.19 brings the following improvements. Now we support maps of any keys. We support anonymous functions. And we also support type checking of protocols and implementations, right? So we are, as each release passes, we start supporting more complex data types, more complex language constructs. And as we start connecting those dots, we are going to get more typing violations. So as an example, if you write this code today, right? This code, we are defining a range, we're pattern matching on a range, and then we are passing it to a string interpolation. String interpolation requires the data type to implement the string cars protocol. So if you do this in Elixir 1.19, you're going to get a warning. And it's a very big warning because we have, for now, like everybody's learning how to use the type system. So we are erring on the side of being very precise and very clear. So I don't know if you can read it, but it's saying, well, you gave an invalid value to string interpolation. You gave a range, but we are expecting all those values which would be valid in the string interpolation, but range got this type, right? And then we give a hint telling you that you should implement the protocol with the location, right? So a very clear error message. And that's what is coming in Elixir 1.19. But before going forward in the talk, let's give a step back and talk about the type system work that we have done so far. So when we announced that the type system went from research into development, we broke into three major milestones. So we want to support type inference we wanted to implement type inference from patterns and guards. And the idea here is that we are adding the type system as we've seen the type system is understanding more and more about our code and it's finding bugs in our code, but we don't have to change anything in our code, right? So this is finding bugs for free, right? This is the stage that we are right now. Type inference from patterns and guards. And then when we are done with this milestone, we are going to start supporting type definitions, type structs, and then we'll be able to type functions, behaviors, and protocols, right? So as I said, we are on the first milestone, type inference from patterns and guards. And with 1.19, we have precise support for all data types. We have type checking of all language constructs. We have type inference of patterns. And then what is missing, and it's something that I was planning to have by 1.19, is type inference of guards, but we don't have it in this release right now. And the reason for this, it's because of something that I'm sure never happens in software projects, is that we had a slight change in scope. Because as we started implementing the type system and working on it, we realized that we can actually provide type inference of all language constructs. And that's going to allow us to look more at your code, look harder, enhance, and find more bugs for free. But of course, it comes with more work, and then our milestones have to be adjusted. And finally, all this work has been a partnership between the CNRS and Remote, and development is sponsored by Fresha, Starfish, and Dashbit. And by the way, there is a new spot to sponsor type system development. So if you are interested, please reach out to me. All right, let's move forward to the next topic, the next update, which is Elixir 1.19, the first release candidate, which is our longest release candidate yet, right? It has been more than a month that the release candidate is out, and usually they last 1 or 2 weeks. And the reason why it's taking us some time, it's because of the feedback that we got. We got some fantastic feedback. We got feedback around three main areas, around the type system performance and warnings. We got feedback on the deprecation of the struct update syntax, and we got feedback on Erlang OTP 28 support. Okay, so let me give you some updates on this. So when talking about the type system performance, I like to say, in the type system implementation, I like to say that we got to the how to draw an owl stage of the type system. Because as we have seen, like we have been implementing like some circles, right? Like some spots of the type system throughout those releases. But now we have drawn like enough circles that all those different pieces they started getting connected. And now we have more type information flowing through the type system, through the type checker, that we started seeing some bottlenecks come up, some performance issues that we want to address. We started seeing some warnings that are not actually correct, and then we have to address them, right? So we got into a stage where we drew a knot that we actually have to finish the thing and do the whole thing. So we have received feedback from like, oh, there is this bottleneck here. There is a um, there is this warning which is not quite correct, and we have been addressing all of those things. And sometimes addressing those things require actually looking at the research and say, hey, research is lacking on this area. We have to do a little bit more research, perhaps publish a paper on this topic to make sure we cover all the gaps. Um, or in this case, Guillaume has to add new chapters to his thesis and so on. So there has been a lot of work in here because we want to make sure that performance is excellent. We want to make sure that everything that we do in the type system is sound with the proper theoretical foundation. So a lot of work in this area. Another feedback that we got with Elixir, with the first release candidate, is on the struct update syntax. This first RC deprecated the struct update syntax, and we got some feedback. The reason why we deprecated it is because when we were looking at it, all the bugs that the type system can catch. Sorry, let me start that again. The reason why we deprecated it is because all the bugs the struct update syntax is meant to catch can now be caught by the type system and in a better way with better error messages and across more cases. So we're looking at the struct update syntax and saying, well, it doesn't seem like it's a relevant language construct anymore. But we got a lot of feedback saying, well, maybe it's not useful for the type system, but it is useful for the humans, right? For us, for the programmers. So the next release candidate will partially roll it back and we will enhance the struct update syntax to, from the point of view of the type system, for it to be like a type assertion. It's a way for the developer to say, look, here at this point, I want to be sure that I have a struct of a certain type. Let me show an example. So this code now in Elixir 1.19 is going to emit a warning which says, look, here you are trying to update the user struct, but I'm not sure that this is a user struct, right? So in order for us to make sure that it is a user struct, it's very straightforward. We pattern, so the error message is going to say, you must pattern match on the struct before update, and that's exactly what we do. So now whenever we define the variable that we want to use the struct update syntax on, right, we must pattern match on the struct. And now the type system is going to guarantee that those things are in sync. And then if you refactor things around in the future, we are going to guarantee those things are in sync as well. So I think this is a place where we are evolving the language now that we have some typing guarantees and allowing some constructs like the struct update syntax to give us more affordances. Um, and the last topic here on the release candidate, Erlang OTP 28 and regexes. Elixir in previous versions incorrectly assumed that regexes could be serialized, that we could write them to disk or send them across nodes. That's no longer true in Erlang OTP 28 because they have revamped the regular expression engine. They have modernized it. However, the Erlang team has been very helpful and they're adding new APIs to support our use cases. So the goal is that when Erlang TP 28.1 is out, we it will just work with Elixir 1.19. We're not going to see breakage in packages or in your application. And finally, to wrap this talk and go into the Q&A, there are two community initiatives that I want to call your attention to. So the first one is the Elixir Outreach Stipend for speakers and trainers. So this was published on the Elixir blog recently. And in a nutshell, we want to promote members of our community to reach out to other communities to talk about Elixir and also learn about them and bring ideas um, and feedback back to us, right? So it's an stipend to help with, hotel um, transportation. So if this sounds interesting to you, please do reach out, read the blog post. My suggestion is we have a lot of great speakers at the event today. So you can potentially get your talk that you already prepared, right? Message it a little bit to a non-Elixir audience and then reach out to events around you, other conferences, and talk about them. And another initiative that is going on right now, so Software Mention is organizing with the input of the Elixir team, the global Elixir meetup. And this is going to be a week in September from 22nd to 28th, where we're going to have meetups around the globe to talk about Elixir. So go to the website. We also have published this on the Elixir website as well. And you can either see if there is a meetup happening close to you, or otherwise you can host your own. And please do check it out. I don't think you have like a lot of people they were reaching out to me, but it's like, it sounds like organizing a meetup can be stressing, or people can have high expectations. And I think the most important right now is for us to get started, right? So it doesn't have to be like something big. You should be expecting 20, 30 people, right? Maybe get if you go to open up your company offices and invite people in. You don't need to have a presenter even, right? Just invite people in to exchange ideas, to talk. Like maybe you can talk about problems that you're facing at your work today. Somebody is going to give you feedback. And hopefully this is going to be helpful to everybody who is going to be present and exchanging ideas, and to the community as well. Well, that's all I had to share for today. So thank you very much. Actually, there is one more thing. Um, the expert language server is publicly available. Woohoo! So if you want to check it out, go to github.com/expert. Right now, there are nightly builds available. So it is alpha status, right? It's for early testing, early feedback, and contributors. And a huge thank you to the language server team, to Mitch, Lucas, Steven, and a huge thank you as well to Lucas Sandroman, who has done many contributions to make this possible. And the launch of the expert language server is only possible thanks to the sponsorship of Fly.io, Tau Space, and River. So a huge thank you to those companies who have sponsored the work that has happened over the last months. And if you want to sponsor, I know a lot of people in the last months reach out, say, hey, we want to sponsor the language server, what we can do. You can jump into the project's README. We have added all the information there. And at the event in particular, there is Dan from the Erlang Ecosystem Foundation uh, that you can talk to and discuss possibilities. So Dan, if you can please stand up so people can know who you are. And everybody who is not Dan, look around and find Dan. And yeah, I hope you enjoy it. Thank you, the language server team. And now we are definitely going to Q&A.
Not a question, Jose. I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I have a question for you, considering on how the community is moving towards packages maintenance and long term. It's my impression that over the last few years, I notice less and less package being maintained, maintainers struggling to hand it over. And I work for Podium, and we maintain quite a few packages and taking it over because we feel the pain. But I'm wondering, like, how can we help the community for getting a little bit more easier transfer of package or consolidation of that? It seems like there's an area where I'm seeing a lot of struggle more and more over time. So
That's a very good question. And it's something that I would recommend, right? Since it is as you said, a community effort. I think this is a discussion that we should have as a community as a whole. So perhaps start something in the forum, perhaps at the event, you can, now that you brought the question up, other people can reach out and discuss about it as well. I know that we have mechanisms for example, transferring package ownership on hacks if it's no longer maintained. So, and I think not a lot of people is aware about that. So, yeah, I definitely recommend talking within the community, see what can be done. Maybe there needs to be changes to some processes around. Maybe we need better guidelines, right? Maybe we have a process that works, but we don't know the process works. So, yeah, I think it's a good question, a good challenge, and we should collectively explore which solutions are available.
There is a comment that the expert repo is not public. It is now? Okay.
It is now. I did it while I answered, so multitasking, concurrency.
Awesome. There is another question of what exactly led to the scope change from type inference for guards to type inference for all language constructs? Was there some aha moment that the extra work will be not as difficult as originally thought?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. We were thinking we yeah, that's exactly it. I don't have anything to add.
Okay.
As we were implementing it, we're like, yeah, we can actually do it. We can actually do more, and we think it's valuable. So, yeah.
And there's also like, as the type system evolves, will this diminish the value of dialyzer?
Hopefully, yes. Yeah.
No more questions? No? All right. I think that's all the questions. Thank you
Thank
so
you very
much.
much, everyone. Have a good one.